So I had two very impactful encounters that got me to understand why having a W-2 income or being stuck on a W-2 income in dependency absolutely sucks, but can be extremely useful. The number one of those encounters is going to be I actually had an opportunity to interview and film a video with one of the nation's largest residential and commercial lenders in real estate in the country. That video is going to actually be coming out relatively soon. This one likely will be coming out first. But that video taught me the value of a W-2 income, but it also taught me the limitations of a W-2 income. The second thing that taught me that a W-2 income actually sucks is going to be an article that came out by Jamie Dimon, the nation's biggest banker and most prominent banker at the time of this recording, stating his concerns around stagflation and how if you're a W-2 worker or, essentially wage dependent like most of us are, why it's so bad of a position to be in a stagflationary environment. I'm going to get into the details of all of this in this video, but I want you to pay attention closely in this video, especially if you're somebody who's largely or completely dependent on some kind of income from a job, a W-2, 1099 income, and you're job dependent. The context of this video is to get you to understand why this is a position you cannot stay in. It doesn't mean it is not valuable and can't be leveraged to go forward. I'm not telling you to walk off your job tomorrow, but what I am telling you is that you have to stay constantly locked in and don't get complacent with a W-2 job solely as your only means of financial, success or provisioning. So those of you who may be new, I'm JP, the founder and architect of the channel. 13 plus years in financial services, 11 plus years in retail banking, consumer banking and small business banking, active mortgage license. You can find my NMLS down in the description or in the about section of the channel. Active FINRA investment license, active state life insurance license, small business certified, and that's business banking, business lending as well. So I've been across financial services for quite some time, given my age, specializing in helping you maximize relationship banking and maximize your borrowing capacity, because believe it or not, those two foundational pillars will help you customize your blueprint for prosperity. So for all of you who are looking to accomplish that goal, you're in the right place. So why is a W-2 income so toxic over time, or can be toxic if you become dependent on it for too long and aren't using it to leverage yourself forward, to move forward with? The reasoning for that is pretty simple, and I'm going to break that down for two important economic factors. So stick with me for a second, and then I'm going to break down how you can actually take your W-2 job or your 1099, your wage dependency, and leverage it into a great financial position where you're no longer dependent on it. You can replace the income without just abruptly quitting the job. So stick with me for a second. First off is, why don't wages keep up with rising inflation? Wages don't always keep up with inflation because they're influenced by factors beyond just rising prices, like supply and demand for labor and the relative value of labor. Additionally, salary increases are often sticky, means that they are slower to adjust both upward or downward. So supply and demand, relative value of labor, sticky wages, inflation's impact on it, and there's other factors, okay? I'm not going to dive too far into those specifics, but they will make sense as I get through the rest of this video, so hang tight for a second. The next thing that I want to bring up is what Jamie Dimon's concerns were in an article that just dropped at the time of this recording, call it about a week ago. His concerns are that we will end up in a scenario where the economy dramatically slows down, unemployment picks up significantly, and inflation stays a bit higher or abnormally higher. That is basically summarized into a definition called stagflation, which many economists will argue is the absolute worst case scenario for an economy. You have inflation, deflation, and then stagflation. Stagflation is when you have inflation and a slowdown in economic activity at the same time. So to make that make sense, essentially, you can end up in a situation where the economic activity in the country slows up, or in your given industry slows up so much that your employer no longer needs you, and you become unemployed and without an income or on a very slim unemployment income. At the same time that the goods and services that your job typically is helping you to pay for or fully responsible for you paying for is going up. So the goods and services that you're used to purchasing on a regular basis are going up in costs, but the source of income that was helping you pay for it has evaporated. That is stagflation in short. So as you can see, if you're in a situation where that happens to you, then that's pretty much a worst case scenario. Your W-2 income sells you short, because if things are inflating, which the economic system wants to happen, but controlled inflation, of course. But if it's inflating, your income is really not designed to keep up with inflation, generally speaking. If things are inflating, but the economy is slowing, then you can end up being completely unneeded, which is, again, that whole value of labor, or the demand for labor could completely taper off, and you can still have to not only pay for goods and services, but they could be getting more expensive simultaneously. One of the mechanisms that's kind of making that happening is the Federal Reserve has rates high. Rates high puts downward pressure on the economy and economic activity overall. On the flip side of that, the Federal Reserve at one point was quantitative tightening, which is a situation where they're like tapering off the money. They're kind of pulling the money out of the economic system through various means and mechanisms. I don't want to complicate that at the moment. If you want a more nerdy breakdown on that, let me know in the description section. I'll be glad to go into that. But essentially, there's mechanisms they use with like buying bonds, etc., that can kind of take money out of the system, or selling bonds or buying bonds, etc. That having been said, they may have rates high on one end, which is slowing economic activity. But for a while, they were like, maneuvering with bonds in a way that was taking money out of the system at the same time, with a full intent to completely slow down the economy, because inflation was getting out of control. Economic activity was getting too high. They're in a situation lately behind the scenes where rates are still pretty high, even though they cut them a couple of times in the last 8 months or so. But rates are still relatively high given the last 20 years as a reference point. But they're no longer doing the same activity with bonds that pulls that money out of the economy. And as they reduce that, the only other angle they can go to, or avenue for them, is to start actually putting money back into the economy. So now, even though rates are up, you're getting close to where you're allowing more money to stay in the economy. And eventually you're going to get to the point where you're putting money into the economy. So you're still depressing economic activity, which again can lead to a slack in demand for labor. But then you're still pumping money into the system, or allowing money to stay in the system in an environment where you haven't completely tamed inflation. And so now you have a scenario where prices could still be rising. So if you're dependent on a W-2 income, like most of us are on some level, you don't have assets that could be continuing to go up in value as goods and services go up. The stock market may still have some level of performance. It's going to be a mixed bag, because obviously you have a slowing economy, which affects the stock market. It could be real estate. Whatever your asset class of choice may be, you could have a scenario where it continues to perform, maybe even grow. But if you're completely dependent on wage, then you're in a situation where that can completely dry up. It can either slow down in demand or in value, in a sense, or completely dry up. So that's the negative part of this scenario. That's why I'm like, having a W-2 job or being completely dependent on that W-2 job can suck in our economic cycle. That having been said, where I have some optimism is that I've been promoting on this channel since the inception of this channel. W-2 dependable wage income is the most attractive form of income in the financial system for banks. If you're not a significant level asset owner, a really stable long-term asset holder and owner and controller, then a W-2 job is as stable and attractive as it gets, as predictable as it gets. This basically means that your banking products and services and resources you have access to, including banking deposit products, where you notice banks always want direct deposits. That typically comes from W-2 jobs, oftentimes than not, or government benefits. And then on the flip side of that, the borrowing side of things, underwriting favors W-2 income the most. It is the simplest, most predictable form of income, generally speaking, out there. And underwriting favors it the most. So those of us that are using strategic borrowing and leverage to acquire assets, hopefully, and make other smart financial moves, our W income can actually be advantageous to us versus us being business owners or gig workers or 1099 workers, where the income can fluctuate greatly, etc. Your W-2 income, as mentioned here, can be sticky, can be predictable. So that having been said, if you're smart and strategic, as I promote constantly on this channel, and the base of this channel is around, you leverage your W-2 income to massage the banking system into giving you access to more financial resources, which you then take to better your budget, better your cash position, and acquire assets that themselves will grow in equity and perform, and even in some cases, pay you cash flow, provide you tax benefits. When you grow the equity in those assets, they start to provide you income, and they're also saving you money in taxes. All of this makes you even more attractive to the banking system. And the lending system, as the video that you're going to see that comes out with the lender that I so graciously was able to interview, you will see in that video as we talk about and break down how you go from being underwritten on your ability to repay to being underwritten on the value of the assets that you have, which is a totally different ball game. Because at this point in time, the banks are getting more and more comfortable with something that's more time tested and proven than your labor, assets. The stock market and real estate has been around longer than you've been working. So when you start to have enough of that around that can actually replace your labor, your income from labor, banks are salivating because it shows you're a good manager and a good steward of those assets. And those assets generally are going to be relatively stable and predictable. Your job will go many times long before those assets will go. So the banking system is very confident in those assets, and they'll lend at the highest capacities and the best rates and terms on those assets. And you can develop your entire lifestyle around it. This is the core foundation to the buy, borrow, die strategy. One of my favorite financial concepts that I literally can watch illustrated over and over, and we're hopefully all striving towards. You buy strategic assets, never sell those assets, borrow against those assets to pay for your lifestyle and acquire more assets, and you die and pass them along strategically and tax-free. At the end of the day, that's the name of the game in this financial system if you want to play it correctly. And you leverage your W-2 for those of us that are pioneers, trailblazing, starting from scratch, like myself and many of you watching this video. We don't come from wealth. You're not likely watching this video and you already have millionaires in your family. You already have significant amounts of money in your family. You're likely paving the way for yourself and the people around you and your family, if you have family that is dependent on you, yourself. So that means you're likely coming from W-2 job, wage, 1099 background, working your way up to assets and becoming an asset owner or a successful business owner / investor. So that basically means what I'm illustrating for you is you have to leverage that. Don't run from that and don't cut out of that too soon. It does suck and can be very uncomfortable to be dependent on a W-2 job. But what you don't want to do is mistake that for thinking that, oh, I need to immediately get out of this now. I need to cut this off and immediately go into business, or cut this off and immediately try to go out here and get a 1099 or gig work or freelance or business ownership, and run into that thinking that you're making a smart financial move, or you're like building generational wealth. You're prematurely cutting yourself down at the ankles. Leverage the stability of your W-2 job and some of the additional benefits like retirement accounts and 401ks. Let them build up. Let your job history build up. Your credit will love it. Your credit, score, if you use it strategically, will love it and build up from that. Your budget should build up from that. Your cash flow, your DTI, all of that will, if you're smart and you use it properly, develop out in a way that will allow you to be qualified to acquire assets. You'll have the excess cash and cash reserves and cash flow. You'll have the stable income, the good credit. You'll be able to borrow at great rates and terms to acquire assets that will perform for you. And you'll get enough of them at some point where you can no longer have to work, or you no longer have to depend on your work to function and get access to great financial tools and resources, including strategic, perfect terms on borrowing and other financial resources available in the system that many of you may not even be aware that are there. But once you get to a certain level with your assets, which comes from the baseline of your W-2 job and your income, the entire world can open up for you. You have to ride that out until you get to that point. You can't prematurely check out of your W-2 job, or whatever type of job income that you have. You have to strategically leverage that into smart strategic business ownership and investing. And so Yes, the economic cycle that is facing us may punish us as W-2 workers. But if you can hold up against that and be strategic and act appropriately and act decisively, you can leverage that, which you will see in a video coming out that I'm excited to launch in about a week or two from now. You can see how you can leverage that into your first asset, your next couple assets, and keep multiplying that out until you have enough assets to completely get away from your ability to repay, completely get away from wage and labor exchange for money, and completely lean on your assets to qualify for capital, to pay for your lifestyle, and to feed the financial system so the financial system starts to work for you. Comment down below. Let me know if you're following and keeping up with what I'm putting down in this video. Let me know where you are in those stages of development. Are you just starting out? Do you kind of have an asset or two under your belt and you're working your way through? What's your preferred asset class? What's your preferred position? Where you think I'm like, I got enough assets where I can get away from my job, or I have the flexibility to get away from my job? Comment these things down below. Let me know what your plans are looking like so we can share these ideas and share our position and share the inspiration, the lessons learned, and continue to grow together. To all my pioneers, welcome back. To my new viewers, welcome in. I want you to like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the video so the video can continue to support you. The channel, support the channel so the channel can continue to support you. Get in the description section down below. Tie in with me on Instagram. Slowly growing out the platform on Instagram so we can share experiences, inspiration, knowledge, and continue to grow our community of pioneers there on different platforms. Get in the description down below if you're looking to get guidance, a curated, tailored plan around developing your banking relationships, strategically using your income to grow your position, mastering relationship banking, maximizing borrowing capacity, starting and growing a small business, and the financials behind that. I can help you with that. Get in the description down below and find out the different services that I offer in areas I specialize, and tie in with me there so I can assist you in this process and save you a lot of time and a lot of money. Other than that, as always, I want each and every one of you to stay focused, stay in motion. I'll see y'all soon.